Hey dude, it's Thub, and I've been collecting scrap computers, laptops, and phones for a while now, even though I didn't know what I was going to do with them, because unlike our American neighbors, the scrapyards in Canada do not have a buy price for e-waste. Well, I've been doing the research and I think I finally have some information to share with you. So, here is how to make money scrapping e-waste in Canada. I'm going to share with you the best ways for Canadians to find a buyer of electronic scrap, but spoiler alert, don't! Just forget about it. Don't bother scrapping e-waste in Canada. It's a waste of time. There are a few small exceptions, and I'll tell you about them in a minute, but first I'd like to share what I've learned in my tumble down this rabbit hole. If you'd prefer to skip the history lesson, then feel free to jump ahead and I'll see you there, but otherwise, let's get on the same page. I'd watched a number of videos about scrapping and saw how lots of people were bringing in loads of hard drives and motherboards to their scrapyards and getting paid for them. None of my scrapyards had a buy price for these materials, but I kept collecting them and saving them up, confident that I would eventually find someone who would pay me for their scrap value. Recently I decided it was time to clear them out and claim my reward, but what I quickly discovered was that for the most part, nobody in Canada buys e-waste. But why? After much research, I believe I have an answer to share. It starts with the Basel Convention of 1989, an international treaty which asks developed countries to prohibit the export of electronics waste to less developed countries. Without this treaty, e-waste would be processed in other nations which may not have regulations regarding safe and sustainable recycling practices, thus exposing their people to harmful materials like lead and mercury. There are several nations who continue to sell their e-waste to developing countries, in blatant disregard of the treaty they signed, saying they wouldn't export e-waste to developing countries, and that's why it's easier for their people to make money scrapping these materials. But we in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? Now, under this treaty, all that toxic waste stays in our own backyards, which demands regulation to ensure all this junk is disposed of safely. Enter the recycling stewardship programs. In order to sell consumer electronics in Canada, you must get with the program, which means extended producer responsibility. This shifts environmental costs involved with the life cycle of your product onto the market price of that product, especially the disposal at the end of its usable life cycle. These costs, in turn, fall on consumers in the form of environmental handling fees, or EHFs, at the point of purchase. These can range from 7 cents on a cell phone in most Canadian territories to as high as $35 for a large flat-screen TV in New Brunswick. At first glance, these EHFs appear similar to deposits paid on beverage containers in Canada, but unlike a point-of-purchase deposit, EHFs are not refunded when the product is returned for recycling. They simply fund the administration, collection, transportation, and responsible recycling of electronics, and that's how e-waste processors get paid in Canada. Not just any scrapyard can acquire those sweet, sweet EHF bounties, however. In order to collect, you need to acquire a Responsible Recycling Certification, or R2 Cert. That means constant paperwork and surprise checkups, so there are a lot of scrapyards which are not certified e-waste processors. The bonus, however, is that there's money to be made recycling devices which do not carry an intrinsic scrap value. Rather than cherry-picking the most valuable pieces and then burying the rest, there is incentive to process items that are typically worthless as scrap, like photocopiers and speakers. All of these steps have been somewhat successful, and Canada manages to keep 46 to 48% of all electronics out of our landfills, well behind Europe's diversion rate of 70%, but an excellent start. So, with that out of the way, how can an individual get a piece of the pie? The truth is, Canada is still way behind in terms of buyers of e-waste scrap for the average Joe or Jane. The only Canadian refineries are located in Ontario, so that's where most of it gets shipped, and the cost in doing so devours most of the profit involved for amalgamators and people who collect and sort the stuff in other parts of the country. When scrap prices were higher a few years ago, there were a number of places that would buy from individuals, but as of today in 2019, none of them exist. Instead, free electronics drop-off locations are spread all across the country in a sophisticated network that covers nearly every town, big or small. Now, to be clear, I'm not suggesting this is a bad thing. Far from it. This is a huge improvement. Most people are not collecting all of their devices in a bin in hopes of getting $20 out of it every 5 years. A lot of people can't even be bothered to save up their bottles and cans even though they do get the deposits back. These programs have been successful because many people would love to send their old devices to be used by someone who needs them, and reuse is the first consideration for everything that goes into these bins. They aren't dumped into a shredder or incinerator, they're going to a sorting facility where they are tested, repaired, and then returned to market whenever possible, at a discount for people who might otherwise not be able to afford a laptop or a smartphone. If the devices can't be reused, they're already in the hands of people who will separate and process the materials in a regulated and environmentally ethical way. So, where does that leave you and I when trying to make money from discarded electronics? Well, as I said, there are processors in Ontario who buy scrap e-waste. Triple M metals, for example. If you live in Ontario, you can just call around for prices and then drive over, like with any other scrap metal. If you don't live in Ontario, you can still ship your material to them, but you'll have to decide if the profit is worth the time and shipping costs. If it isn't, you can call around to your local scrapyards and recycling facilities and see if you can make a connection with a buyer from years past who might be willing to make you an offer on whatever you've got. That's how I found an amalgamator in Calgary who buys all kinds of e-waste, but unfortunately is unable to purchase from individuals without a GST number at this time. For a handy list of locations, check these websites. For British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritime provinces, you can check the ERPA website at recyclemyelectronics.ca. And for Alberta, visit ARPA at albertarecycling.ca. The Northern Territories just have their own regional websites to direct you to drop-off locations. Now, outside of those, you could collect the high-value parts and list them on eBay. People seem to make money selling RAM, processors, fingerboards, motherboards, MLCCs, and other components as scrap. Remember, though, that scrap value is always the lowest possible value for anything, so finding a way to resell your old laptop or phone or parting it out will be the highest profit. If you can't resell it, and I know this seems counterintuitive, believe me, I was disappointed too, just bring it to a free drop-off location. If the thing can be repaired, its sale will help fund environmental programs, and if it can't, at least it isn't going in a landfill. Electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream by a huge margin, so it's important we get with the programs now. And if you're still excited about finding gold and silver and platinum in scrap TVs and electronics, maybe consider opening a sorting facility. The industry's growing, and prices are not going to stay down forever. Now, I know this wasn't all great news. I was hoping to find a reason to keep collecting motherboards and fingerboards to make a whole bunch of money on them like our neighbors to the south. But I'm glad I did the research because now I know what the industry looks like at the moment in Canada. Hopefully by doing the research and putting it all together, I've saved you some time and helped you be a little more efficient with your time going forward. And if so, why don't you give this video a thumbs up by clicking the like button. And if there is anything that I've missed, please let me know in the comment section because this industry changes all the time and I would appreciate the heads up. Now, whatever your position in this industry, please remember to leave it better than you found it. And keep doing the thing.